In high seas or calm, both opportunity and risk lurk just below the surface. Welcome to BlackFin Group's Shark Cage podcast.
Good day, folks, and welcome to the Shark Cage BlackFin's podcast series. My name is Keith Kemp, President and CEO at BlackFin. I will be your host today. To start, I want to thank our sponsors. A real special shout out to all of BlackFin's preferred partners: Mortgage Flex, iEmerging, Cloud Virga, Take3 Technologies, Prudent AI, Finastra, Lending Pad, and one of our newest preferred partners that I'm excited to have on the phone today is Argyle. All doing great things for the mortgage banking and mortgage lending industry. So let's get started, folks. I'm really excited about this conversation as we sit down with John Hardesty, General Manager of Argyle's Mortgage Division. Welcome to the Shark Cage, John. Happy to have you here. Talk a little bit about what's going on in the fraud side of our industry.
Yes, Keith, thanks for having me on. Again, always love chopping it up with you on all topics. So excited to dive in today.
Yeah, this will be interesting. Fraud's definitely, I've noticed on some of my preparation homework that fraud's on the rise, and I look forward to digging into that for a little bit more with you. A little about John. In 2023, John Hardesty won the Housing Wire Insider Award, where he was formally recognized as a key influencer in our industry for educating and delivering to lenders some of the best technologies that will move our industry forward. Prior to his role as general manager of mortgage with Argyle, John served in a series of leadership roles, overseeing key strategic partnerships for several of Black Knight's product and services. So before we get in a little bit deeper, I do want to share a little bit about Argyle, because I think this is a critical perspective for folks to know where John's coming from when it comes to our discussion around fraud and what's happening in that side of the world. But Argyle is the fastest growing and highest converting automated income and employment verification platform in the U.S., empowering mortgage lenders to auto-retrieve pay stubs and W-2s, verify income and employment, and qualify for day one certainty. This is really cool. All at 60 to 80% less cost than what the market generally offers today. So huge savings when margins are razor thin like they are today, and for the foreseeable future. So if you're not working with Argyle, encourage you to be reaching out to John to get to know him and get to know a little bit more about what Argyle is doing for their clients. So let's jump in here, John. Let's talk fraud. As I may have mentioned before at one point with you, I'm a former originator and producing branch manager and mortgage executive. I know firsthand a majority of the borrower risk profile really hinges on that employment and income verification. I mean, one bad loan that results in a buyback can literally shut a lender down. So can you share with me and our listeners what's the current state of fraud? What are some of those trends in lending that we should really be thinking about and understanding? I mean, people may have their own, employment and income verification, but it could be an outdated platform where maybe there's some risk areas, gaps for risk based on it being an older platform, less reach within the industry or employment world to be able to verify income. I mean, what are some of those trends you're seeing in fraud? What are some of those areas of risk with lenders? What are you seeing burgeoning from a fraud trend standpoint that lenders may not realize are really on the horizon?
Yeah, it's a great question, Keith. And as you mentioned in the intro, we talk fraud every day at Argyle. And the themes I'm hearing in the space really are around, what is fraud? Misrepresenting, right? Whether it's income and employment, whether it's appraisals, right? Whether it's home values, things like that are all still a hot topic. What I find super interesting, intriguing, and really about this topic overall is CoreLogic came out beginning of this year, mortgage fraud 30% higher since the pandemic, right?
Wow.
Well, their index points to a 30% increase in fraud. But taking a step deeper into that is let's look at types of fraud. Let's look at income and employment, our space. I can Google right now, generate a fake pay stub. Over 1 million things pop up where you can click a link, create a pay stub, export it, and it looks no different. So my point is, whether intentional or unintentional fraud, you have access to find ways to almost make this so simple to the point of if you don't have the right technology and things, which we're going to talk to in a little bit, it's really hard to tell. And I think, and look, I've said this before publicly, I think AI could really change our industry for the good. But as we dive deeper into AI, I know we've talked a lot about AI together. It opens up another can of worms with, I think about the dialers that sound like Keith Kemp, right? And are not Keith, and how that can, for say you're verifying income and employment 10 days prior to close, and someone calls and says, yeah, or answers the phone and it's AI. I mean, there's so much technology. My point here, fraud's on the rise, so many different types of it, and technology, for better, for worse, is enabling that at times. And we have to have the right tools, the right people, the right process to be able to find fraud and then have the process in place to overcome it. So again, I love this topic because there's a lot of layers to it, and it should always be at the forefront of our conversations in this industry because it's only going to continue to change the ways you can do it.
Wow, I remember having to, all the steps we had to take when we were originating loans around trying to verify, income and employment. And, so I guess in retrospect, considering we didn't have as advanced technology, our risk mitigation was fairly low. Fraud was certainly out there, and we'd stumble on those deals once in a while. But what you're saying is we have to really, when it comes to these trends in fraud, we really need, as originators at the front line level with the consumer, or as a branch manager, or as a regional manager, that should probably be a top part of our agenda and talking point internally, is to talk about what are we seeing from a fraud standpoint. Is that what I hear you saying? We need to be more, it needs to be more prevalent, not a reactive thing, but a more prevalent, proactive conversation within organizations.
Yeah, I think it's checks and balances. It's having the right tools, having a process, understanding where frauds happened before. Again, it can happen all across the origination journey. But what do you have in place to protect you? And look, you mentioned this earlier. Buybacks can sever a mortgage lender. And if you don't invest, or at least have the processes to always have the checks and balances there, you're putting yourself at risk, right? And hopefully you align with the strategic partners that are going to help you overcome that in a really efficient way, right? And that's what we talk a lot about.
So from a trend standpoint, AI is a big factor, and it's probably, we're just getting started, would you say? The party's just getting started when it comes to AI and the risk of fraud exposure?
Yeah, I think it can work both ways, right? I'm no expert on AI. I read a lot about it. Didn't write ChatGPT or anything, but sure. Again, it can be used as a value add. I know a lot of companies have some really powerful AI tools in underwriting and tools that can check pay stubs and things like that. But I just think about the edge case a little bit of how powerful it can be to help you, but also being careful of what it also can do on the fraud piece, right? Yeah. And I just think that's a topic that we will see over time. How are these companies combating that with technology or people or process?
Interesting. So across the board, you're hearing just an increased intensity from a trend standpoint around fraud awareness and the strategies and tools that need to be, discussed and recognized within organizations. Very helpful.
Yeah, and maybe if I can just take another angle at this too. Look, we know home prices are up, and we know, for example, the first-time home buyers got it. And I'm not putting them in a light or anything, but we need a lot to buy a home these days, right? And I think from a qualification standpoint, now more than ever, you need to show the best portfolio to get that dream home. And that opens up to potential fraud risk, right? It's just an example of like a real life where it could come in, and you have to protect yourself from it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point, John. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, John, when considering how bad fraud is, not only today, but considering those projected trends for such a dramatic increase, particularly as a result of AI, what's a lender to do to battle the fraud, the increase of fraud, the risk of growing fraud? How are lenders expected to solve or at least mitigate their risk when it comes to income and employment verification? Because I remember 20 years ago, I was using the old, work number, right? But as quickly as fraud has matured, what does a lender need to do to fight these modern day fraud challenges? Because I know some of these older systems just they unfortunately it's how the world works in software, but sometimes they're just not able to move as quickly with specific concepts. So can you share a little bit about what solutions, what strategies, what concepts lenders really need to start digging into and recognizing as part of their tech stack to help mitigate that fraud risk?
I'm going to take a step back and tell a quick story about this summer. I had the opportunity, I was invited to the FHFA Tech Sprint in Washington, D.C. And I bring that up because they brought executives, lenders, vendors all together and said, hey, let's spend 4 days together in rooms talking about fraud, talking about how to get adoption across the mortgage industry. But of all of the solutions, majority of them were around direct source data, right? And that, to answer your question, Keith, is where I'll go here is, in the verification of asset space, you had players first connect to bank statements, right? And digitally share that directly from financial institutions. In the Argyle world, we're the leader, and we built the idea of connecting your payroll account, and all coming directly from the source of truth. And from a fraud perspective, that's crucial because now you can lean in and say, not only is the data accurate, it's in real time. The second they authenticate into their platform, I'm getting fresh data. And I know with confidence, because it's untouched, it's not sitting in a database. You mentioned TWN, it's not sitting in there for 30 or 60 days. It's real. So I get that. I also get these pay stubs and W-2s in our world. And now, man, I have a clear, confident picture of the borrower. So I would say, higher than that, direct source data is the key, and leaning into it. And when you're working with your tech stack, right, your LOS, your POS, your lead generation tools, you should be pushing them to think about how can they partner with someone like that. Because we have great partners in our business, and we spend a lot of time not diving into the technical details, but let's think about data ingestion and how we can take this real-time income and employment data and package it in a way that's going to protect lenders from buybacks and bring confidence into their pipeline, right? So I think it's clear that LexisNexis came out with this, that direct source data is a key to fraud. And if that is a staple, and I believe it should be for any originator out there, you should begin to look at a variety of tools, or even at the least OCR technology that's got built-in fraud detection when they're OCRing information from documents, right? There's so much out there. You just got to build the tech stack around it. So as we know in this market, you get that loan file, you're confident to move it down, and then you can push it through and have really good confidence behind it. So that was a loaded answer, but no. I could go on and on about the ways technology can help you in fraud.
I asked for it, so but that's direct source data. I want to highlight that concept again. That is just so critically important for people to get their arms around, because we get a lot of questions around what technology do you recommend. as people look at rebuilding their tech stacks for whatever reason. Obviously, technology can get outdated fairly quickly in this industry as things evolve so quickly. But I really had an aha moment when you talked about that direct uh, data concept. I had an aha moment around when you did a demo of what you guys are doing at Argyle, and I was like, I was blown away, but I couldn't quite put all the pieces together until just now, uh, about your vast menu options, all the integrated partners that you have that allow people to get that direct data verification immediately, real time. It's like you said, not data that's from 30 days ago. It's literally real time based on your tight integrations with so many different employers, in all the different, we're definitely living in a new, gig economy. So let me ask you that, I got, what can be your confidence in kind of these new, gig economy, Uber drivers, freelancers, contract workers, like my son, he's in Morocco right now, living it up on the beach surfing, but at the same time, he's doing a bunch of freelance marketing work for businesses all over the world. How do you automate that kind of income verification with these kinds of tools, direct data, directly integrated data points that you're talking about? How, when he goes to buy a car, how are you solving for someone like him, potentially saying he makes, $10,000 a month when he only really makes $2,000 a month? I mean, are these tools that, agile and that I guess rich to be able to, help you map that together to get to an accurate number? Or talk me through that kind of scenario with a gig economy type individual borrower.
Yeah, the story on gig, and it's something we love to talk about. Our business at Argyle actually got started verifying the gig sector. DoorDash, Uber, all of these very small people, because they need to verify. They want the path to home ownership. They want a car loan, right? And it's something we take pride in, and it's something that I think a lot of the direct source data tools, obviously us being one of them, take pride in. We cover the Fortune 1000 at a 99%. Yes, but we also, when that processor is looking to say, hey, Keith's son has this job and he works here, a lot of the old credit bureaus or the old way of doing it would say, you got to call that. Good luck, calling a number, right? With the new technology out there, it's a search. Oh yeah, they do cover, X gig employer. Log in, like they log in every day to log into their shift work. And all of a sudden you have the complete picture, just as if they were a Fortune 1000 W-2 earner. And it's really around access, giving consumers in our world access to share this information, right? If they don't have a payroll, account, that's hard for us, right? But for the most part, whether you're gig, self-employed, to QuickBooks or W-2, we can go there, and we do it on behalf of the consumer. And we're just opening up the door for that lender in our world to have a better picture, to hopefully give the path to home ownership to that person.
And that's where your vast menu of integrations comes into play, because I may be a gig worker, but I may have 3 different employers that record my income, and through the integrations. Okay, I'm putting the pieces together here. Sometimes I'm a little slow to the party, but man, that's just powerful. That direct data, resource connection. That's key. Folks listening really got to get your arms around that concept. And if you're really trying to figure out, where to go with your verification of income and employment, at least, at least explore that to get a better handle on that concept with Argyle. Because I'm just realizing as the lights turn on that, that you guys really have taken a more modern approach to verification of employment and income. So very cool.
Absolutely.
All right. Wow. Great advice for lenders to help them close that gap, and really meaningful recommendations on our prior call about ways that lenders can get ahead of the curve of income and employment verification fraud. So to this point, we talked about how lenders can significantly reduce fraud. Now, talk to me, John, a little about the downstream benefits of those strategies, tools, and services that really lenders don't really necessarily think about when it comes to having a quality fraud, services partner. I mean, the one thing that comes to mind for me, I don't mean to jump the line here, but the one thing that comes to mind for me is the less fraud I have, the better, the better relationship I'll have with my investors. I'll get better rates, et cetera. So I see some of the downstream benefits, but can you expand on, from your vantage point, what are some of the benefits that you're seeing, that clients that you have are seeing by having a more modern day VOI, VOE vendor partner? Like, I know you guys work with Michigan Credit Union, Lake Michigan Credit Union up there. Know those folks, they're great, but what are some of those benefits that clients will see short term as well as long term?
Yeah, one, I would say, I mentioned this earlier, but confidence in lending a little bit, confidence in the data set that you're getting to make a really important decision as a lender of how you're going to move forward with the loan. To your point, when you get this information, you feel good about it. How does that impact the rate, right? Because you have the complete picture. So that's one. But I think what we've seen really in the mortgage space over the last two and a half years that we really brought this to the market was you have fraud protection in a way. You have, you mentioned cost savings, right? I don't want to go too far into that, 60 to 80%. So I can get confidence in lending, protection on fraud, 60 to 80% cheaper than legacy providers. But I have a quicker loan cycle, Keith. We have one of our largest clients tell us on a call, 5 to 7 days faster using direct source data in this market to qualify from really submission to clear to close. And it's not just Argyle, it's direct source data. Yes, we have a lot of ways we help with that, but you're leaning into a data set, to my point, you're leaning into a data set that's going to help you make an informed lending decision and a fast one. And in this market, that's crucial. Tying it back to, I'm confident I got this data from the source, no fraud risk, let's go. So I think there's cost savings. I think there's a confidence play. I think there's an efficiency play, all surrounding around what is direct source real-time data. Direct source real-time data.
Let's say that 3 times, man. Direct source real-time data. I mean, that's what it boils down to. And obviously the benefits, I mean, just far outweigh any kind of, implementation timeline. And man, the cost savings, I think it's just a perfect example of what modern day technology really can do for a lender, to simplify the process, speed the process up for the consumer experience. That is just, it's fun to hear those things as a lifelong originator.
Yeah, and maybe I'll add one last piece, because you mentioned short term. That's the origination process. But what's the long term benefit from a fraud perspective on real-time income data, real-time direct source data? And I think it's protection against buybacks. I think when you go, whether you're taking it to an investor, Fannie, Freddie, for example, and you use these tools that are out there and you run the final verification following your guideline, whatever it is. I mean, how confident can you be that you're protecting yourself downstream from getting that loan back with that kind of technology around you? And it's a story we talk a lot about, is how we protect against buybacks. And we do some really innovative things with real-time data to help lenders know exactly what's going on in their pipeline in terms of income and employment. And I love talking about it, because I truly believe, Keith, of being in this industry, that these kind of tools are changing the way people originate and changing the way you loan manufacture. And I love that from every angle. And it's something, to your point, I love to talk about. So reach out.
That's fantastic. I love it. I love it. It's folks, the benefits, I mean, just obviously a laundry list there. Customer experience, cost savings, 60 to 80%. I mean, that's huge. And then being able to really transform that lending, process and get those process efficiencies. I mean, everybody's looking for those angles these days, and it does come back to, looking at these specialized, areas of service where you need it. You can't afford to not have it. You just got to make sure that you're working with the right partner that's really offering the modern day solutions with real-time data, source resources. So I love it, John. So thank you. Some really critical insights, warning signs, and key words of wisdom and advice for lenders on how you should be thinking about fraud today. What kind of modern day tools, as I mentioned, that you need to be turning to more sooner than later, like that of an Argyle. So just before we wrap up here, any final words of wisdom, John, that you want to share with the listeners?
No, Keith, again, really appreciate you having me on today. Obviously, as a friend, thank you. I always enjoy chopping it up and just spending time with you. So thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise, my friend. Well, we'll definitely have to do this again because I want to hear some other, cool updates as in other trends as they continue to evolve in the year ahead. We're really proud to have you guys as a preferred partner because you really do stand for one, the leadership integrity at Argyle is just off the charts. Two, your quality of technology is really, positioned to move our industry forward. And third, your commitment to service is just second to none. So I really applaud what you guys are doing, and I'm so glad that we were able to carve some time out today for this initial discussion. Executive leaders, you heard it from right here in the Shark Cage. Some of the latest trends in fraud that should have your attention. What kind of tools and strategies you really need to be digging into, kind of concepts you need to be digging into to really, absorb those key benefits for better employment and income verification. If you want to learn more about what John and his team are doing at Argyle, go to www.argyle.com. Argyle.com. Until next time, this has been another exciting episode in the Shark Cage. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us in the Shark Cage. To find out more about the show or the information provided in this episode, visit BlackFin Group online at www.blackfin-group.com.